Good evening and welcome again to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm your host, Joshua Solomon, and JP Marzullo, my fearless co-host, is still out rounding up all the communists and throwing them back over the state line where they belong in Massachusetts. We'll get a full report from him when he comes back. Until then, Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades is sponsored by the Wilson Hill Pistol Club, located right here in Manchester, New Hampshire, the oldest sports shooting club in New Hampshire at 1732 Lakeshore Road. We have open membership. We do not have a waiting list like other sports shooting clubs in the state. You can reach us at wilsonhillpistol.org. You can get our training schedule at the website. You can sign up for training at the website. And you can come and see us in our monthly membership meeting, the first Wednesday of every month. That's next Wednesday at 7 p.m. directly after this show. That was a mouthful. All right. Tonight, we have a returning guest, a guest we like having on, Jim Creighton. How you doing, Jim?
Josh, how you doing?
I'm sorry. Representative Jim Creighton, and you are also running for another office. You're looking for a different job, huh? You're getting bored with being representative.
Never bored. Never bored. No, I'm running for New Hampshire Senate District 8.
Okay.
The backstory is that Ruth Ward did a phenomenal job for 10 years, and she decided to retire, and she came and asked me if I wanted to run.
No,
she's very persuasive.
So you got the backing of the incumbent, so that works.
She's my mentor, and
Okay.
and so I gladly accepted her challenge.
All right. Sounds exciting. So, but until then, you're still a state rep.
I am.
Right,
Yeah.
so-
I chair the House Labor Committee.
Okay.
And I've done that for the last couple of years, and really enjoyed my time in the House. The House is a great place to serve. A lot of good work done there.
So how many terms have you served?
This is my third term.
Okay, so your third term. So you rose up the chair pretty quickly there. I hear a lot of folks in their first term, they get a lot of, they come on here and they talk about the learning curve, learning to be a representative and learning the process, and some getting very frustrated with it, some folks saying, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
But you embraced it enough to chair a committee for a couple of terms.
Well, the thing I learned in the Army was that you listen more than you talk. And so as a freshman, I was in Resources, Recreation, and Development with Andy Ronzullo. And he was a great chair. I learned a lot from him. And so that helped me, just listening to how professionals do it, how people that had a lot of experience do it. And then my second term, the speaker asked me to go on to Environment and Agriculture. And so I was with Judy Aaron, another great leader, and I learned a lot on her committee. And then the third session, the speaker called me in and he said, "Hey, listen, I want you to chair labor." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, sir, I can do anything you want, but I don't have a lot of experience in labor." And he goes, "That's all right, you'll do fine." And I had some really awesome people on there, Lino Avalani and Brian Labrie, and just a ton of really good people on the committee that helped coach me through. And so it was a fantastic experience chairing the Labor Committee for the last 2 years.
Okay. So what kind of bills come through the Labor Committee? I mean, we all have a picture in our minds of certain things, but sometimes folks will tell me that a bill came through their committee, and I'm like, well, does that really belong in your committee? Shouldn't that belong over in Justice? So what kind of bills come? Because sometimes I mix up where a bill should be. So what kind of stuff comes through your committee?
Yeah, we had the minimum wage bill.
Okay.
That came through.
That makes sense, yeah.
And we had the right to work bill came through. That was about 12 hours of testimony and a lot of angst.
That one sounds that one's a contentious one, right to work, because when you think of right to work, you think of unions.
Right.
And you think of unions, you think of, very liberal-leaning type attitudes, right? And conservatives tend to not back unions as much as liberals back unions. So, but then, there are those of us who may not have the best favorable view of unions and whatnot. We prefer right to work, right? We want to be able to work without that oversight. But I also do see the value in unions. They do have a value. They do protect their members, and they do lobby successfully for certain things for their members.
They
so
provide
how was
good
that
training.
right to work?
I mean, it was tough. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, I believe that businesses shouldn't be beholden to the unions, and that businesses should be able to hire whoever they want, whether they're a member of the union or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think the unions perform a great service. I mean, if you look at why unions started, it was because of child labor, it was because of horrendous work conditions, it was because the businesses were abusing their workers in many ways, and that's what initiated unions. And they performed a great service. They still perform a great service in terms of training, in terms of bringing people off the street and making sure that they're capable of performing their jobs. So I have no problem with the unions. And so the discussion is about what are the requirements, and does a business have to have the union?
Right.
And the right to work says that it doesn't. Now, there are many conservative Republicans that, you know, a lot of guys were in the unions, but they're conservative leaning, and so they vote against the right to work based on their background.
Really? Yeah.
And so it's a tough fight. It's a tough fight even with a majority that we had this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, you know, everyone is sort of a product of where they grew up and what they learned and what their businesses were and how they interacted with the unions in their businesses. And they have a right to their own opinion. And that's why we made the best argument we could, and we vote.
And so how did it go with that one?
We lost.
Okay.
We lost on the House floor. It went through committee, but we lost on the House floor.
I think that particular issue, and I don't mean to hijack the conversation to this one.
No,
I
it's
heard you
fine.
say it, but I think that particular issue kind of underscores the way that Republicans work with each other, right? There are issues where we don't just have a firm stand,
Right.
Right. We don't demand that this is the firm stance, right? We have conservatives who are on both sides of that one
Right.
issue, and as opposed to other issues that, say, liberals have, you know, when it comes to extreme issues, abortion and LGBT issues, where if you don't toe the party line, then we're going to punish you somehow. But in the GOP world, we don't do that to people. We allow that dissent and that discussion, and we don't lose our heads over it. And I think this is one of those issues that, like I said, I've always been, I see the need here, and I see that they have done the negotiations, they've helped their employees, and that's why they want to say, hey, if you work for this company where we negotiated those deals, then you need to be part of the union, right? So it's a hard thing to balance with the right to work, whereas other issues are, kind of cut and dry as far as I'm concerned, as far as, protecting life and liberty,
So having sat in that seat now for 6 years, I think your assessment is largely true, that the Democrats tend to vote as a bloc. Mm-hmm. They do have outliers every now and then, but in general, they're much more lockstep. I think the Republican strength is that we respect others' ideas, that we do have different fractions. You have some libertarians, you have free staters, you have traditional Republicans, you have MAGA Republicans that all have, the liberty folks that all have their own opinions and their own viewpoints. And the strength, I think, in our party is that we have very pointed and constructive discussions about those issues. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, as in right to work, we just can't convince folks. And I think that's unfortunate from one-off perspective, but I think as a party, it's much more healthy.
I agree. I think that's exactly the point I was trying to make. Anyway, so you had right to work. You had, what was?
Tipping was a big one.
Oh, tipping. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk about that, because the president was on about tipping at some point as well.
Yeah, it was a tough issue, a lot of discussion back and forth, and the tip pooling issue, which was really what we were looking at. Does a business have the authority to mandate tip pooling, or is tipping completely on an individual basis? And there are many businesses, mostly restaurants that have tip pool arrangements. We heard from one person that ran it's like an event company.
Okay.
And so they had large parties, rehearsal dinners, weddings,
Yep.
anniversaries, whatever.
I can absolutely see how that would be a slightly different from a restaurant. It's
much
as far
different.
as the tip.
So they ran up to 700 events a year. And by New Hampshire law,
That's like 2 a day.
it's 2 a day, basically. And by New Hampshire law, for every one of those events, they have to have a separate agreement because it's a volunteer
Right.
aspect. And so therefore, for each event, they have to volunteer to the tip pool or not the tip pool. And if they don't, then they're in violation of state law. But if they do, they're in violation of federal law. So this person came in and testified, and it was exceptionally compelling. She said, listen, she says, I have an agreement with the Department of Labor in the state of New Hampshire that recognizes that we're in compliance with federal law, but we're in violation of state law, and they said that's the best you could do, you're okay. And that went on for a period of years.
Really?
Then that person in the Department of Labor switched out, and the new guy comes in and said, hey, you guys are in violation of state law, you're gonna get fined. And she's like, well, wait a minute, I have an agreement with the Department of Labor. No, you have an agreement with the person in the Department of Labor who interpreted the law as different. And so we had this long discussion about
Out with
businesses
one
in New
admin,
Hampshire
in with a new.
that exactly, and it's businesses in New Hampshire that cannot meet the letter of the law at the federal and state because they're written in opposition to each other. And yet we couldn't change the law to come into compliance with federal law so that these businesses could operate to the letter of law, which they want to do.
Right.
But the challenge is that there are people that felt that by meeting the federal law, then we were then forcing workers, compelling workers to tip pool. Josh, to me, one of the things that I enjoy is, listening to all these people in this testimony. And they come in and they say, well, this is this, and the other person says, it's black and it's white.
Right.
Well, it can't be black and white at the same time.
Yeah.
And another example that I like was in a couple years ago, Environment and Agriculture. And it's very compelling testimony. They came in and it was some animal activists came in and they had pictures of eagles and foxes and coyotes that had eaten rodents,
Okay.
which they will.
Yeah.
But these rodents had been poisoned by rodenticide
Okay.
that had been developed in 1972, and it was a blood thinning. So it didn't kill them right away. They died over a period of days, and in those interim days, these predators, these raptors, ate them.
Yep.
Raptors then had this rodenticide, and they died because of the blood thinning.
Okay.
And it was compelling testimony, and I'm like, man, we got to change that. And then the rat control guy comes in, and the Pied Piper comes in. He says, hey, listen, that's great, but this is the only thing we have on the market today to get rid of rats. He said, did you know that if a male and female rat get together, that in 1 year they will have 1,200 descendants in 1 year?
That's insane.
That's how fast they
Because of the
they
incubation
populate.
time. Yeah.
Right, short incubation time, large litters, and then they just, he says, listen, if we don't have to have rodenticide, but then you've got to accept, then when we go into someone's house and the closet has rat droppings on it, and the hallway has rat droppings on it, and the baby's bassinet has rat dropping, that there's nothing we can do. That we cannot alleviate that problem. And so for me, diving into these issues, understanding both sides, trying to come up with an answer that makes a lot of sense, to me, it's hard work. And it's gut-wrenching because the testimony on both sides is compelling. But you have to recognize that oftentimes there's no fairy dust you can sprinkle on a problem
Right.
to fix it. And you just got to
We're going to have to choose.
get in there and figure it
We're going to
out.
have to choose one of those options.
Or something in between. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. So how is this season going? Like we talked about a couple of bills that came through. Is anything particularly that you're interested in that went very well or very wrong?
Well, the first thing is it's this idea of, and the thing I've knocked on thousands of doors over the last 6 years, but hundreds of doors now in District 8. And the big thing everyone's concerned about is property taxes.
And we've talked about it all season.
And it's an issue. It's an issue. I think a lot of people don't understand that the education budget and the community budget are combined into one bill. And so talking to people about that, I think one of the biggest things we did was we passed HB 1300. And what that does is that says, hey, listen, we hear you. The property back taxes are too high. We're going to give you a chance in November to vote to cap your property tax. And there's a COLA associated with that, and there's certain exceptions for new buildings and that type of thing. But essentially, it gives the town on a 60% vote the option to cap their taxes. And I think that's an important deal because typically the town taxes are voted on in March. About 18% of voters statewide vote in the March election. So you have 18% of the voters deciding what taxes the town's going to pay.
Right.
If you do it in November, New Hampshire's a phenomenal state. 82% of the people in New Hampshire vote, on average. And so you make that vote in November.
Even in an off year?
That, my understanding is that's the average number of folks that vote in November.
Okay.
It may be a little bit less in an off year, but on average, that's the number that.
I get real concerned about off year like this one because this is a very important vote, right?
Right.
My taxes have gone up $1,000 every year since I got my house.
Right.
And it's out of control. And 70% of your taxes is the school board tax.
Right.
Right? A lot of people don't realize that, and they go and they vote for these feel-good things, whether it's for the school board or for a town contract or something like that, and they don't realize what that's doing to themselves, right? And even renters.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. You know, the renters don't see their tax bill go up because they don't have a tax bill, but then they complain when their rent goes up because their landlord got a new tax bill.
Right.
But this one, I would have liked to have seen earlier the better, which is right now. I would have liked to have seen this bill take place on a presidential year.
It's scheduled for 2 years.
Right,
this year, so it's not scheduled for presidential.
The vote that's taking place in 2 weeks, I would have liked to have seen it when we know we're going to get a huge turnout. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, we have to act now.
Yeah.
The fastest we could do it was November.
Because if the towns don't get 60%, and I'd like to see the numbers afterwards. I'd like to know how many towns actually said, yes, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Got 60% of their voters to say, yes, we're going to do a tax cap, because hopefully we can then force the towns to stick to that tax cap. We can't force, for some reason, Manchester went and overrode their tax cap. I mean, they keep doing it. They keep overriding it, even though they have one.
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to force that. But this is a very important one to
Yeah,
a lot of people, because
it is.
it's not just for the property owners, it's for the renters too. It's for everybody, because if their taxes don't go up, your rent doesn't go up.
Right.
So,
There's provisions in it to limit the administrative aspect of the schools. The school budget's been going up steadily.
we're number one in the nation as far as the school budgets expanding. Did you know that?
Right, and, yeah,
As the administrative costs per student is going up faster in New Hampshire than any other part of the country. It means we're just throwing money at admin salaries. That's all we're doing. It's administrative stuff. It's not
Yeah.
stuff for the kids.
Right.
It's not stuff for the students. It's
Right.
out of control, and we got to cap it.
and we've pushed about $500 million from the state into the schools. Mm-hmm. And yet the budget still goes up, even though that state money is going in there. For example, Claremont, one of my towns, the school budget in Claremont is roughly $21,000 per child. The state is paying $14,000 of that, and the town's picking up $7,000. But the fact of the matter is that the state is pushing money out toward the
The
schools.
state has put more money every year consistently, and yet the narrative out there is that the state isn't funding the schools enough.
Yeah,
Somehow, and they're taking that and they're adding in this lie about the EFA accounts as well.
yeah,
So as far staying with the school issue,
Sure.
one of the things that I have a problem with every time I go to my town meeting, I go to the town meeting and I go to the school board meeting where we vote on the warrant articles and the language of the warrant articles that are going to show up on the ballot,
right.
right? And so we go to these meetings, and they're very contentious every year. But one of the things that bugs me, I don't begrudge anyone a pay raise, whether you work for the Department of Public Works or the police union or the teachers union. I don't
Right.
begrudge anybody a pay raise. I want pay raises, right?
Right.
But when I go through COVID and I go 4 years without my own pay raise, but I have to pay for a 4 or 5% pay raise because it's in the negotiated contract
Right.
for the police, the DPW, and the school. That hurts,
Yeah.
right? Because that's less money out of my paycheck, and it's just going into another paycheck, and to the school. I'm just going to use the school because again, they're 70% of my tax burden.
Right.
It goes into their paychecks, and yet I'm seeing declining enrollment and declining proficiency. Less than 50% proficiency in English, math, and science.
Right.
But yet everybody's getting a raise out of my paycheck every year. So my biggest peeve with this is that the negotiation for the contracts are always closed-door sessions.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right?
Yeah.
So I have no problem with a private entity negotiating behind closed doors with a private entity due to personal matters and personal names and all of that stuff. Private entity, private money for private entity, private money. I got no problem with that. But we've got a private entity, supposedly, right, the teachers union, negotiating behind closed doors with public money.
Right.
Right? That's my money you're negotiating for. Why is it behind closed doors? You can do that negotiation without putting names in anything.
Yeah.
Right? All right? Teachers at this level will get a raise to here. Teachers at this level. You don't have to have personally identifying information as part of these negotiations.
Right.
Period. I want, and I put this bug in the ear of every state senator and state rep that showed up in this chair right there.
Yeah, fair enough.
I want a bill that puts that into law. If you want to negotiate for public money, that negotiation needs to be public. I want to show up and I want to hear why you're asking for a 4% raise every year, and I want you to justify that contract to me when enrollment's going down and scores are going down. I want that justification. But what instead happens is all that negotiation takes place, the contracts are actually signed, and then we go to the town meeting and say, oh, the school board wants X number of dollars, and we're not telling you where those dollars are going.
Yeah, plus the decision's already been made.
Right.
That's what
Right.
frustrates me, is that
That's-
oftentimes
that's what
you're not going
really-
to change the decision based
Right.
on the school board meeting.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Right. So I can't say, no, you can't have that contract. I can't say, go back and redo it. I don't have a choice.
It's already done.
Right? So if you're going to negotiate for my money, I want a say in it. I want that to be open, and I want a state law that says that has to be open. I have no problem with private entity, negotiate in private. I don't care what you do. But if you're not going to you're going to negotiate for public money, I want to know what that is. And like I said, that applies to all of those privately negotiated contracts, you know, the police, DPW, and I don't begrudge anybody their raises, but I want results,
Yeah.
number one, and I want a say in it. It's my money.
So, I mean, from my perspective, if you look at education, it is the most important thing we do.
It is.
That drives the future. And we should be confident as taxpayers that when kids graduate, they're ready for the trades, that they're ready to go to college, they're ready to be active members of society. We should feel comfortable with that. And everything we do should be focused on the outcomes of how those kids are better prepared to be good, upstanding members of the community. And that's why I think the parents should have a choice. You know, I talk to parents on the street that, you know, my child was bullied, or I'm not happy with the way that the math science is being taught, or I'm not happy with the extracurricular activities that are going on, for whatever reason. That parent should have a choice so that that child, if he does better at home, or if he does better at a private school, then put her into that program where she can maximize her potential. So that when she gets out of school, she's ready to go. She's ready to be a productive member of society and excited to be a Granite State citizen. And I don't think we're there. Now, I will tell you, you know, my elementary school, my high school, I visit there on a regular basis. Man, those teachers are good. And you go in there, and the kids are excited to learn. So I think, you know, the public schools, they're still going to be 80, 90% of the students.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to.
And we have to do well by them.
Getting rid of them. We're not talking
Yeah.
about defunding
Yeah.
them, but that's what they're panicking about. That's what they're
Yeah.
producing the panic
Yeah.
in order to get the votes for more money. But no, we don't want to get rid. I'm a product of public school as well.
Right.
And I'm doing just fine, right, in a high tech job, right? So.
Both of my daughters went to public school. In fact, they went to 8 public schools. We moved 23 times in the Army.
Yeah, I counted it up myself one time. I went to about 8 or 9 different schools between K and 12.
Yeah, and my oldest is a doctor.
Yeah.
She's a veterinarian. And my youngest, she's a sales executive doing phenomenal work. She went to 7 years of public school, and then 1 year we had her at a parochial school. And that was on Long Island, and quite honestly, the principal of the school told us that we should send her somewhere else. I never knew why, but we went and talked to her, and she says, you know, your daughter will be much better in a parochial school. And we said, okay, that's what we did. But, you know, my kids are a product of the public school, and they're doing great. We just have to figure out how to make it so that the kids are more proficient when they graduate.
Yeah, I'm not, like I said, I don't begrudge anybody their raises, and I'm not against the idea of public schools and public curriculums, but we do need accountability, right? We do need these scores to come up. You know, when my town comes to me and says, well, we're above the state average in proficiency, and I look at the numbers, you're 1% above the state average in proficiency, and it's still less than 50%.
Right.
Like that's not an excuse to ask me for more money,
Yeah.
right? So that's the other side of it. You know, I said I'd like to see contract negotiations be more open,
Right.
and find some way of making that happen. But I'd also like to find some way of forcing some sort of accountability. I don't want to punish the schools or the teachers. I don't want to. But I do want accountability, right? You don't get your 4% raise that was in that contract if you have less than 50% graduation rate.
So I think there's another side
right?
to that accountability.
There's got to be something. I want to see scores go up. We're the Granite State, right? We you know, the very first astronaut came from this state. We have a history of producing great minds, and that's going down the toilet.
So it's a team effort. As you know, the education is like a three-legged stool. You have the kid who has to show up to school rested. They have to be motivated to learn, and they have to be excited. Then there's the parent who has to create the environment at home where the kid gets enough sleep, the kid does his homework, and the kid is taken care of at home. And then there's the teacher. The other aspect is the administration.
Right. And we've seen over another controversial issue recently that parents are being pushed out. We don't have to tell the parent what's going on at school. We're going to keep that a secret. Right?
The parent owns the responsibility.
You're absolutely right about this team effort, and my parents were very involved. I know, you know, to the point where even as a high schooler, if I was underperforming to my parents' standard, but perfectly fine for the school,
right.
My dad would show up and say, no, you may think this is acceptable for my child, but I don't, right? And you know, it was embarrassing to me, but it forced me to work harder, and that type of thing is not tolerated by the school administrations anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So we need to get back to that type of teamwork, right? This business of schools being able to create policies where they don't have to tell parents what's going on. We need to get past that, and I think we did with a couple of bills last session.
Yeah, we're working toward it, and in legislation, in my short 6 years, it doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
You've got to build that coalition. You've got to build, and you've got to make the language acceptable to 51%.
And that's the frustration
and it's tough.
Of the general public with the legislature and with Congress, right? It's always been my frustration is I see that you're moving in the right direction, but man, it is turtle's pace.
It is. And if you value other people's opinion, then you have to go and earn that vote every day for every bill. And it's just not easy. But that's the work that they pay us $100 a year to do.
Well worth it, right?
Well worth it, every penny.
All right, so you're not getting a pay raise if you win the Senate, but you're going to be doing what I understand is a lot more work in the Senate for exactly the same $100. So.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Yeah.
That's what everyone tells me.
So you've been knocking on a lot of doors.
Knocking on a lot of doors, going to committee meetings. I've been to 3 selectmen meetings in the last week. You learn new stuff every day. And quite honestly, I ran for the House because at the time, 7 years ago, Governor Sununu had vetoed 79 bills.
Yep.
And I looked at that and I said, well, you can be part of the solution or part of the problem. And if you've got the resources, the time, the energy to make a difference, then do it. Otherwise, just shut up and color. And so when I ran, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. But a couple of things happened. And one is the realization that of the 1,000 plus or minus bills that we do a year, 700 of those are approved on consent. And what that means is the Democrats and Republicans worked on it in committee and came up with the same exact answer. So that's 70% of our work is done in complete agreement with what's going on. That means that 30% of the bills are contentious to some level. Most of those 30% are contentious on a reasonable level, where we disagree, we vote, and off we go. About 10% of the bills are really, really contentious and get pretty crazy. But what I think is that the time that I've spent there, we've done a lot of good things for the state. For example, we lowered the business taxes. In lowering the business taxes, we've actually increased by over $700 million the amount of money coming into the state. It's counterintuitive, but if you lower the business taxes, more businesses come in.
Right.
And that's exactly what's happening. And so we're making our state attractive to businesses to come in. We got work to do. We're the lowest energy cost in New England, but we're one of the highest in the United States. So we have to work to reduce the energy cost across the board. That's nuclear, that's gas, oil, wind and solar if you want. That's great.
That's an issue. Energy is an issue that's very close to all New Hampshire, right? Like in the winter, we all have heating bills. You know, however you heat your house, whether it be electricity, oil, propane, whatnot. And then in the summer, lately, we've had some brutal summers, right? So it's an air conditioning bill, right? It's all electric.
Right.
So we've got an energy pricing issue here. It hurts year round. It's not like we have a mild season for 3 or 4 months where we can take a break. We don't get that break.
No.
What can we do?
Well, there's several things we can do. I mean, we can look at the different pipelines. We can do the small modular nukes is really coming online. That technology is moving forward, so it's safe.
Where would we locate one of those? We have Seabrook.
The small modular are city level ones.
Right.
So and they take up. It's not like a massive facility like Seabrook.
Right.
And so you can install one at the city and municipal level as opposed to a statewide.
And so there's going to be a lot of safety issues there. There's going to be a lot of OSHA, EPA, and a lot of protests, right?
I don't know about protests.
I think there'll be less protests.
Yeah, I don't know about protests.
Not like the 70s where there was nuclear protests and we were just all about shutting it down all across the country.
If you remember back in the 70s and 80s, you had 3 Mile Island.
Right.
You had Chernobyl.
Yep.
Later on, you had Fukushima, but that was later on. Yeah, and then you had a movie, The China Syndrome came out.
Yeah.
With Faye Dunaway.
Jack Lemmon.
And that was a powerful movie when you combine that with 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl. I just finished a book on Chernobyl. And
really?
It's, oh my gosh, from design to building to we're short on materials. Oh, well, we don't need that material.
They did a lot of shortcuts. I don't know if you saw the miniseries.
I did. I saw that, and so if you look at Chernobyl as an example, that was an example of exactly what to do wrong, but it came along with 3 Mile Island, which was his own, set of crazy circumstances.
Chernobyl was like 86, and 3 Mile Island was in the mid-70s?
Late 70s,
right.
yeah.
So they were within a 10-year period
70s.
Of each other.
Exactly.
So it was very fresh in the minds of everybody who witnessed it. Yeah.
So from an energy perspective, if we can get it down, I mean, it is low with the New England standard, but if we can get it down so that attracts more businesses in, and that will continue to push taxes down, that'll increase the tax base coming into the state. So I think that's important. The other thing that we did that I'm proud of is, quite honestly, the sanctuary city. We eliminated sanctuary cities. We reformed the bail laws, and so New Hampshire is the safest state in the union.
How is that coming back? Right. So we had the bail reform. 5-7 years ago, somewhere in there. And that led to, because I've been on about that one as well, that led to more homelessness, more drugs, because in my opinion, if you're arrested for drugs, right, you possession, or if you're found unconscious and you needed to be Narcaned or whatnot, you were also put in a holding tank, right? So Friday night you're put in a holding tank. By Monday morning you're sober, and
Right.
you've also spent 3 days at the county level being exposed to all the programs that are offered at the jailhouse, right? They say, here's a sober program we'd like you to show up to. Here's a minister that would like to speak with you, right? There's all kinds of programs inside that people don't realize exist.
Right.
But when you have bail reform and you have this $0 self-recognizance bail, and you're back out on the street looking
Governor,
for
yeah,
your next hit 2 hours later, you're not exposed to those programs and you're not forced to sober up. And it steamrolls the problem. And so we reformed that. We rolled that back.
Rolled it back.
Right. But
Governor
we rolled
Ayotte
it-
led the charge on
Right.
that. And talking to the sheriff, the Hillsborough sheriff, he seems to think it's working.
Yeah.
That it's having an impact on drugs, it's having an impact on homelessness, it's having
Yeah.
an impact on all those things that you stated. So from a legislative perspective, working with the governor to get these things done, I think it's having a dramatic impact on the state in a very positive direction.
Yeah, yeah. I that was one thing that I just could not wait for. When I heard it was up for a vote, I was like, we got to get that signed like right now,
Right.
because that's if being in downtown Manchester for this television show, it forces me to be on Elm Street
Yeah.
once a week, right? And so. I've been doing this show for, I think, 8 years now, but I've lived in the Manchester area for more than 20. And you could see the decline.
Yeah.
But actually, in the last year or so, we can see a reverse of that decline.
Right,
We're
it's
starting
evident.
to see it. It's
Right.
not back to where it was or should be, but
getting there.
we're seeing it. We're seeing it get better.
So the other thing that, as a veteran, I work very closely with General Michaelitis in the National Guard Bureau.
Okay.
And I also own a small company that we work directly with the Wounded Warrior Project. And so we just got back 2 weeks ago from the White Mountains, where we took 16 veterans up there, guys that are really suffering from PTSD. And we helped them along the healing process. Working with General Michaelitis, we put together the New Hampshire First for Veterans program, which consolidates a lot of the veteran services so that veterans can more easily access housing assistance,
So
job
you're involved with
assistance.
Liberty House and the Vet Fest and yeah,
Indirectly.
yeah,
I mean, I've supported the Liberty
Yeah.
House in the past. All great programs, and I think that with close to 70,000 veterans in one of the most, we have one of the most populated states in terms of veterans per population. I think it's a great place for veterans to come. I think we take care of our veterans, but there's a lot of work to do, and every year I work to pass bills that help veterans improve their situations.
good. Yeah. So what else has been going on? You've been knocking on doors,
Knocking on a lot of doors.
you shaking babies and kissing hands.
Yeah, in fact, 2 days ago, you go to a door and you do your analysis, right? So the first thing I look at is veteran plate. I said, okay, well, this is going to be good. And then
Most likely a friendly.
most likely friendly. So I walk up, and a nice guy. He comes out, Matt. He comes out, and we're talking about the Gulf War, because he was a Marine, and my unit, the 2nd Armored Division, was right next to the Marines, so we were similar areas in Saudi and Iraq back in '91. We had a great discussion, and I said, well, if you're supportive, would you mind putting up a sign? He goes, I'd love to put up a sign. And he says, by the way, I'm opening a gun shop, and would you like my card? I said, I love your card. So he goes into the house, and his dog is barking. He goes, "Hey, listen, do you mind if I let my dog out?" King was the dog name, a long-haired German Shepherd. And I said, "No problem. My dog was in the car, a black lab, and he's watching over everything." And so King comes out, and he's a exuberant dog, and he comes to say hi, and he jumps up on me, and I don't know what he was doing. It wasn't aggressive, but it clearly, you can see the scar on my nose. It was the first time I've been bit since I've been door knocking, over 5,000 doors.
He must have felt horrible.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. He goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. He was terrible." He went and got alcohol. He got a bandage. We fixed it all up. It's fine. But the adventures of door knocking.
Yeah.
People like to talk. So, biggest issue, as I said, is my property taxes. How come my property taxes are? What can you do about that? In the rural areas, in District 8 is pretty rural. You got, Charlestown. You got Langdon, Leominster, Ackworth. There's no yellow lines on roads out there. It's pretty rural. They're worried about their roads. And so working with the DOT and working with actually Department of Environmental Services has some to do with it too in terms of getting approvals to repair certain roads and bridges. That's a big issue. Education is a big issue. People are worried about how much money they spend, as we talked about, versus what the outputs are, what the outcomes are. How well are my children ready to go into the world when they get out? And it's a big concern for folks. Yeah. But I love doing it. I love going up and knocking on doors. And, sometimes you get a door slammed in your face.
Yeah.
But more often than not, people want to talk. They want to let you know how to make their lives better.
Really? So as a state rep, you had a smaller group of towns that you are a rep for, but running for state senate, now you've got to go out into unfamiliar towns.
Right.
Towns that may not be familiar with your name. How are you being received in these areas? Do they say, "Hey, who are you?" Or
well, that's a great question, because I think I'm a little unique. So I had District 38 first, which was a flotilla, 10 towns.
Okay.
And so of the 20 towns that I represent, I have represented 6 at one point in time or another. And so almost a third of the towns that I represent, I've had experience in.
Okay.
And so going back into those towns, it's been 4 years, but going back, I know people there and I can make inroads. The other thing that I thought was fascinating was that most of the representatives in the House of Representatives of the towns that I represent are Republican. And they're all friends of mine. And so when I go door knocking, for example, we went into Claremont a couple weeks ago. I had 3 representatives with me.
Oh, okay. So that helps.
When I went into Newport,
there's a familiarity
I had
there.
Skip Rollins, and Skip Rollins is like a god. You walk around and he knocks on doors, and people open, and they throw your signs up. And so using this network of representatives that I've worked with for the last 6 years in the House has really been a benefit. And then the Republican committees in Cheshire County, in Hillsborough, and in Sullivan County have been phenomenal. Even the Republican committee in Ware, they open their arms and welcome me like a lost child. And so I haven't had to go into a town cold. And,
okay, well, that's good.
And that's been a blessing, I think, that to have those folks that I've worked with and built relationships with that I trust, that say, okay, here's how, because some towns they say go door to door. Other towns they say, no, it's the dump, you got to go to the dump. Other towns they say, no, just stand on the corner with a sign, and so understanding the flavor of the towns and the best way to outreach to those towns has been.
Have you ever been kicked out of a dump? I ask this question a lot because when I was campaigning, and this was 2005, I was kicked out of the dump. You can't campaign here.
So-
but a lot of folks come in and say, yeah, going to the dump on a Saturday morning is a great way to meet people.
Everyone's
And
going
it
to the
is,
dump.
because when I used to go to the dump in that town where I was campaigning, if I
Right.
went to the dump as someone who was dumping stuff, I would see folks that I know. I'd see my state rep,
Right.
Gary Hopper, former host of this show,
Right.
who got me into this. I would see Gary, and we'd sit and chit chat, and I see people in town, and it's a great place to socialize, which makes
Yeah.
it a great place to campaign. But it was the one place that I got kicked out of campaigning. But so I like to hear the dump campaigning stories.
So I haven't been kicked out of a dump. But I think, Jim Fidolfi taught me this. So the first thing you do is you go talk to the supervisor of the dump.
Yeah.
And you get the lay of the land and the rules. And normally they'll tell you, don't go beyond here and don't block traffic.
Right.
That's the thing. So, if you go in, you set your signs up, you're ready to go, and then if people want to talk to you, you have room to bring them off to the side.
Right.
And talk to them. I really enjoy going door to door. I'm more of an action guy. Sitting at the dump, I enjoy talking to people, but there are periods where there's no one coming in. I'm like, oh man, I should be moving. So I'll do whatever's necessary, and I'll go to the dump. I really do enjoy talking to people there.
You have a very rural area that to work with, and door to door in a rural area is very time consuming.
It's a different animal. people from Manchester.
You're not
say,
going from
I
condo
knocked
to
on
condo to
200
condo.
doors. I'm
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Shoot, it takes me 10 minutes to go from one door to the next. You know, and so it's a different animal. It is, and that's why a lot of people out west in the more rural areas, they'll say, hey, the dump is a better way to go because it does. It takes 10 minutes to go. By the time you drive up the quarter-mile driveway, you get out of the car, you sort yourself out, you knock on the door, you talk to a person for 3 minutes, you get back in. It's slow. It's a slog.
Yeah.
And so I will take advantage of old home days, of parades, of places where you can meet larger people. I went to Leominster yesterday, and there were 12 people there, all leaders in the community, all very interested in making sure that Leominster is taken care of, and it was a lot of fun at the selectmen's meeting. So there's a lot of different ways to get out there and meet people.
We've only got a couple minutes left. I do want to talk about your books. I think the last time you were on the show, you were running around, I think, with your first book.
It is, yeah.
Remind us about that first book, and tell us about you've got a second one coming.
I do. So the first book is called Coalition Leadership.
Yep.
It's about my 2 years in Afghanistan, focused on my second year, which was as a brigade commander of a NATO brigade of about 3,000 folks. It's 9 different nations. And it basically goes through vignettes of what happened during that year and what were my leadership lessons learned. So it was a compilation of how do you build a coalition? How do you motivate people when you have different languages, training,
yes, I remember this
cultural
conversation.
aspects?
Yes, I was very fascinated with that.
It was a fascinating year. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think we made a difference. And writing the book really allowed me to sort of synthesize my thoughts on leadership, on how do you take an organization and move that in a common direction. I've used a lot of those lessons in the House.
Yep.
Everything you do in the House it's about a coalition. It's being a coalition so you can get 51% of the votes. And so a lot of those lessons apply. When I sent the book to various different people at very high levels, and the feedback I got was, Jim, this is not a military book. This isn't a State Department book. This is a business book. This is an academic book that teaches people how to be effective in coalitions. And so if you're in Johnson & Johnson and you're a global organization, you're in China, you're in Japan, you're building multicultural multifaceted organizations.
On an even larger scale than you were
On a
already
much
working
larger
on.
scale.
Yeah.
So the second book then says, what are the lessons and how do people apply them? And I talked to a wide variety of people, CEOs of major multinational organizations, of nationwide nonprofits. And then I talked to people who have been successful businessmen. A veterinarian, very dear friend of mine, has run a veterinary business for 30 years. How did she do that? How did she apply those lessons? Mm-hmm. And so I've taken those lessons and I've said, okay, guys, and it's about 20, 25 people that I interviewed. And I said, how do you make this work? How does it work in your organization? Why is this important or not? And it was a fascinating ride. I turned the draft into the publisher a couple months ago, and it's going through the publishing process now.
Okay.
So I never thought I'd write a book. I never thought I'd be in the legislature.
And now you're here at
Now here I
two,
am.
and you're not only one aspect of legislature, you're going to go for the other house as well. So
Exactly.
you're going to do everything you said you weren't going to do twice.
Life's an adventure, right? You just got to get it done.
All right. Let us know how we can help and how we can get in contact with you.
Sure. I'm Jim Creighton, running for Senate District 8. I have a website, of course, CreightonforNewHampshire.com. I can be found at Facebook at Creighton for New Hampshire. And if you have a question, please email me, CreightonforNewHampshire@gmail.com. And I really appreciate your vote and your support. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Nice
Josh,
to have you
thank
again.
you, sir.
And we'll see you next week.
Thank you.